Good morning, everyone. It's Carol Laurie, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Debra Atkinson, who is not a doctor, but she's an expert in how we can keep healthy in our bodies at 50 and up. And this is a critical component for everyone. Even if you're not quite 50, there's no such thing as being over-prepared. So welcome, Debra. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Love your community.
And just tell a little bit of the community what it is that you really do, because you're a specialist in this very unique niche and you don't deal with 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds. It's really 50, 49 and up.
Yeah, only my own. I have to deal with those. So those are the hardest. But other than that, yes. And it's not that I haven't for years, but that I think really pours into this midlife woman. And so most of my clients and our students in programs are over 45. And in fact, we had two who were at our retreat this weekend who were 67. So we are in postmenopause until the end, but we talk about all of the changes related to health and being in that middle sandwich generation where we've got not only our health, but our careers and our families and people depending on us. Often at certain periods of our time, we all seem to be going through that, losing parents, loving parents who might be closer to the end. And it's about holding on to the muscle, holding on to the bone, holding on to our brain health, and finding our Goldilocks of exercise to complement hormones, but also the history of joints and small aches and pains that may make the ideal exercise program require some modifications.
Well, that's especially true for women who are on tamoxifen and aromatase inhibitors. And one of the horrible main side effects is joint, every muscle, every ache, and you're just in horrible agony. Yeah. And in addition to that, there's this lack of energy that happens from the oxidative stress and inflammation created by breast cancer treatment, chemotherapy, and radiation. And unfortunately, most women, I have to say, do not have an exercise plan in place before this whole process starts. So given that information, it's very important for the women to understand that when they do one of your programs and work with you, it's not about all of a sudden you're lifting 20 pounds. We have to start very slowly. You want to talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. And I think you also have to we want the structure in place. And probably elsewhere you've heard this, but structure gives freedom. So you do want that blueprint and you do want some kind of I need something to follow. However, I'm asked so very often, will you just tell me what to do every day? Because I'll follow directions. And yet the answer to that is we have to co-collaborate. I can give you the blueprint. And then we need to say, what's the feedback you're getting from your body, your energy? What's that telling you? And do we take a step back? Because that will actually accelerate your progress and your feel good. And it's not I should feel guilty about this because I'm not doing it all. It's actually, you should celebrate because you're actually listening to what it is that you need as opposed to blindly following a program. So I recommend that everybody, and this is even those 20-year-olds who stubbornly may not do it, but I think we're at a point where one of the things wisdom of having a little experience on the planet does for us is we're able to say, I'm going to be a little wiser about the way I begin. We start with a lighter weight. We do a little higher repetition range when we begin. And do we need the support of heavier weights for bone density and for metabolism potentially? You know, the ideal is yes, but where we need to start is where it's all doable. We're training our brain to train our muscle, and we're gradually finding where is the space where I can do this very comfortably. I get the benefit and the risk is very low. So any follow-up pain or aches, very minimal. And yet I'm in the sweet spot for I have energy the rest of the day. Nobody wants to exercise and that be their central, now I'm done for the day and I have to.
You're so tired, you have to take a nap, right? I mean,
exactly.
It defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly.
So I'm sorry I cut you off in there. I was so excited
Okay.
about sharing that moment. I have women say to me, I don't can't really exercise. I go, what's the problem? Well, by the time I finish that, I have to go to bed for 3 hours because I'm exhausted. So obviously that's not working.
Yep.
When I started out with my getting back into shape during the pandemic, I had let things slide. I started out with the 5 minute out and 5 minute back syndrome, which is I live in a very hilly neighborhood. I started out by walking 5 minutes out and then I turned around and walked 5 minutes back.
Mhm.
And this is a moment where you can really pull in your positive mindset. I could have said, oh my God, that's horrible. I could only walk 5 minutes. What's the matter with me? But I went, great. I did 5 minutes
Mhm.
and I'm going to stay at that for a few days and then I'm going to increase it. And now I'm doing 2.5 miles several times a week. But I think the weightlifting is really critical for bone health. Can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. And I think there's a wide continuum. So we couldn't say that walking isn't positive. And I think this is where we get a little confusion. There's kind of two rules of thumb when it comes to bone density. So weight bearing exercise, when we stand up, we're weight bearing. There is more benefit to walking because each time you set that heel down, you get a little heel strike, you get a little bit more benefit. And, if you were running, if you were able to jump or to hop, you get a little bit more benefit from that. So all of that is weight bearing, where we're actually on our feet. Weight resistance, on the other hand, is where you're either using free weights, you're meaning dumbbells of any size. Maybe that's a water bottle full of sand and rocks if you need it. We did a lot of creative things during the pandemic, as you might guess. And your body doesn't know what shape those weights are in. That might mean machine weights if you have access to a gym or prefer the gym. That also can mean bands and tubing.
I love bands. I love
Yeah.
bands. I love bands.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. And I will tell you that within our programs, I don't discriminate against bands, but I don't play into them a lot because there's such a variation in the resistance and it's a variable kind of pull. So at the beginning of the muscle, where your insertion or your origin is, depending on which piece of the limb we're talking about, there isn't enough resistance. And in the middle of the
Right.
belly of the muscle, there is plenty. And if I hold this up, you can see that the belly of the muscle that's where your Popeye muscle is. But often it's the end pieces, the insertion and origin, where it's weaker. And we sometimes miss that. It's too little on one end and it can be too much on another. So it can inhibit range of motion. I think they're a great tool as long as you know, am I doing what'll allow me full range of motion and really targeting what I want? I like things that are like life, that are like picking up the dog, taking a stack of dishes and putting it on that up shelf and bending over to pick up the groceries out of the back seat or out of your car. So it's literally picking up weights is probably one of my favorite. Even if you have access to a gym, doing machine weights can help you safely lift heavier. And yet you also probably need that. Let's pick up some free weights because it's lifelike. And you're going to go through those motions where you're picking up something freely in your hands in one or the other or both. And we need that kind of work in order to be able to get out of bed, in able to rotate over, we flex, we extend, and do multiple kinds of movements at one time. Even if you think you don't lift weights, think about the course of your day. Did you do any of the things I just described? Picking up pets, dogs, children, dishes, groceries. We all do lift weights in one way. And the whole idea is to make those things easier.
And use your body properly so you don't end up hurting your back. I mean, if you go like this as opposed to
Yes,
pulling your abdomen, I mean, there are ways that you teach women to lift properly so they don't get hurt, right?
exactly. Learning how to hinge at your hip as opposed to rounding your back and understanding what that is. And I like to think that's one of my special sauces, being able to whisper in your ear to get those shoulders down just at the moment that they were beginning to creep up. So it's starting the motion in the right position, feeling the weight on your heels and not on the balls of your feet, getting in position for the start point, for the finish point, and then beginning to layer in those little nuances where the devil's in the details. So if we get those things right, there are fewer aches and pains and strains, and there are a lot more benefit that come from it.
I think that's what really important, which is when you start out with the right foundation, you're less likely to make mistakes, which can really get you into trouble later. And that's one of the things that you teach. Especially one of the things I really love is that you have gradated programs where you're not expecting women who have never done, major exercise program to come in and be in great shape already, right? It's like we
Right.
start out with what I call 5 minutes out and 5 minutes back. So can you talk a bit about that program? Because women are really suffering with joint pain and everything, and they're not in great shape, and it's a source of anxiety and stress for them. How do I start?
Yeah, huge. And, within any program, so let's just be very transparent. So if I give you a program and I'm giving it to a group of 5 women, they're all at a different starting point. We would have to agree if we were even talking to our friends, we all loved exercise. We're at a slightly different starting point. Maybe it's because of a knee, because of a pre-existing condition, or a level of fatigue because of stressors going on in our lives. None of us are exactly alike. So ideally, you take that program and you're able to say, based on the input of, here's what I want you to experience and feel while you're doing it. We generally will do multiple sets because ultimately that will be the best for your strength and endurance and for your bone density. Meaning, we'd like you to build up to doing 3 sets, sometimes more. But in this particular beginning program, 3 is a sweet spot. Generally, we don't necessarily want to push over the edge. We want to just create that strong base and foundation. But as a beginner, my suggestion would be we do 1 the first week, and you remain there and have that, how did I feel when I got back home? Say after that 5 minute, you have that moment where you're able to say, I could have done more. And you be okay with that, thinking, all right, let's see how we feel tomorrow and the next day. We've all experienced, in the moment, it sounded like a really good idea. And then afterward, I felt too tired. And so it's so much better to take that 1 step forward, feeling like I had to hold myself back. And someone listening most likely is feeling like, oh, that's so me. I overdo it, and then I'm on the couch, and then I do
have a negative feeling or a negative expression about, oh, I don't like this. I overdid it and I got hurt. It's like, that's not the whole purpose, right?
So true. And here's the reality. So here's what may help that sink in, that you're not behind. You're not actually skipping the progress. You're making more progress because you stop at that point and then allow yourself the resilience. So what we're doing is raising the ceiling on the ability to sustain a certain level. And when we know you've done that, say for a week or 2 weeks in a row, we know that you can safely, let's add the second set. Let's not change anything else. We keep the weight the same, but add the second set. So we can safely say, how do I feel after that? And if that felt like a little too much, maybe we don't do 2 sets both times. We do 1 set one day, 2 sets another, and gradually we're going up. But if we change all the variables at once, if you're making soup, we don't know what seasoning it was that was too much or too little, right? Yeah.
That's really true. And there's an enormous amount of research that in PubMed, which I'm always doing, and in there, that talks about the benefit of exercise and reduction of recurrence of cancer in general, but specifically we're talking about breast cancer here.
Yeah.
And exercise really reduces your leptins, and leptins are an expression of how much adipose or fat that you have in your body. So when we build muscle, we translate, we get rid of some fat, correct?
Correct. So what you're helping yourself do is actually use blood glucose as
Mhm.
opposed to eating foods that elevate blood sugar levels. And because they do, we elevate our insulin. And that's all as it should be. But the higher that blood sugar is after a meal, and if you have less muscle, it will be higher relative to if you'd had more muscle and ate that same food. Your blood sugar might go up, but it's going to go up in just a rolling hill as opposed to a huge spike. And when the blood sugar goes up, insulin goes up, we are in fat storage. So you're simply helping yourself use the blood sugar, pull that out, and it does not take a lot. So lots of recent studies, in fact, show movement throughout the day is supportive of decreasing that bump after each meal. Taking a walk after dinner is also supportive. But imagine if you take that a step further, and now we're creating actually more muscle to be doing those things by just strength training twice per week. You're actually kind of elevating the whole experience overall and keeping the blood sugar and the fat storage down and supporting body composition by, as you have more muscle, you naturally have less percent body fat, even if you don't lose it, but you will. And the benefit is in now I have more energy. I have more stamina and strength because I've got the muscle. And that's an important factor. So there's a lot of confusion, and people have just recently commented for some reason, someone wanted to know how exactly is more muscle increasing my metabolism? And the point really isn't. So if I told you, you'd be severely disappointed. It's like learning how many calories did I just burn after an exercise.
Not a lot. I was surprised when I started. First of all, I don't really count calories.
Right.
I don't recommend people do. But when you first start to exercise and you have your phone or your app and it says, "Oh, you walked this many miles and you burn this amount of calories," it was like, really?
Right.
Is that
Right.
worth it?
And that is so not the real equation. The benefit is now you've got more energy, that those ideas that sounded good but maybe left you sitting because you were too tired to do them. It's like, yes, it sounds good and I wish I had the energy to do it. You now do. And so you're more active those 23 hours of the day, or 23 and a half, because you've done the exercise. That's where the benefit comes in terms of metabolism and boosting it. Your all day energy is higher when you find your sweet spot. It's not about let's burn calories while we're exercising. It's let's give us the strength and the stamina, the endurance and the mood, the lift of depression or anxiety. So I want to do those other things all day, every day. And they don't have to be big calorie burners, but imagine burning a low level of calories because you're active all day, and how that adds up versus burning a lot of calories in a very short amount of time. The actual totals, it's actually greater when you're looking at lower calorie burn, but all day long.
That's the way to go.
Right.
So, can you tell? I'm going to, for all the women who are watching now and will watch later, I will be posting the link in the Facebook page and the Facebook group and sending out to my community through email. So do not worry, you will not miss out, because Debra is about to start a new program and she's going to tell us about that right now.
Absolutely. So it's our 12-week Stronger program. The title, or the subtitle, is called Tone and Define. Ultimately, it's about building a foundation. So it's about getting started with a higher repetition range. And that means that you're lifting a lighter weight to reach temporary muscle fatigue. And when I say that, one of the terms we say at Flipping 50 is we need to flip fatigue, meaning flip the way we think about it. It's not the fatigue after the workout and on the couch. It's simply the fatigue of I'm lifting 20 times. By the time I get to 18 and 19 and 20, it should feel like I'm aware of the muscles she wanted me to feel here.
Okay, by the time I get to 10, I'm aware of the muscles. So, and when you first start out, you may be aware of the muscle after 3. So we all have to start where we start, right? And that's the point, is you start with 3 or 5, and then pretty soon, within a month, you're up to 10, and then you're up to 15, you're up to 20.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, 20 is, I can do it, but it's like, oh my goodness, I'm really, yeah, I need your program is really the message my body is saying, do the program, which I'm going to do, ladies. So I encourage you to all do the program with me, and then we can all get into better shape, because there is nothing that feels better than having arms when you go like this and you don't feel like, oh, I have to wear short sleeves.
Or long, right?
Or long. Thank goodness it's long right now, because I have this flabby thing underneath here, which, it's not so bad on my legs because I walk, but it's like, okay, I'm not going to be an old lady with flabby arms. You don't need to be an old lady with flabby arms or flabby stomach. We don't need to have that. Debra is not flabby. She's in great shape, and she is an example for all of us how exercise works, and it's enjoyable and positive, and that's what it's all about. So,
and let's talk about the other piece of it. So, the power and the strength and the confidence because of arms or because of abs or because of shoulders. I think that's a big piece. And I will say this, that one of the favorite things that I've ever heard students say is, I started to lose weight, or I started because I wanted the muscle tone. And the end of that sentence is, I got my life back. It is far more about inner confidence and inner power and the energy, and you'll carry yourself differently. Your sleep potentially will also improve. Takes only about 10 minutes of movement per day by a poll, National Sleep Foundation, to increase self-reports of sleep quality by 33%. So that's a pretty good investment.
That's wonderful. I want to say the other big motivation is, and I know this sounds weird, but my daughter said to me, and this is for everyone out there who has children, Mom, I don't want you to be in a wheelchair like Granny, which was my mom. And she was in a wheelchair for the last 3 to 5 years of her life. She lived to almost 92. And, I know it's weird to think about a wheelchair. I'm in my 60s. Why am I thinking about being in a wheelchair? Or if you're in your 50s, but the time not to be in a wheelchair is now. And
amen. Yes,
it comes before you know it. And, the messaging that we get from American advertising is, it's shifting a little bit now, but there's this commercial with older people, and they're using their walkers, and they want everybody to have a walker. You don't need a walker if you have muscle tone and muscle strength, right?
That is so true. Yep. And you are right now planting the seed for your 85-year-old self to either thank you or to wish you did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You don't want to look back and go, well, I should have, or I wished I had. This is a wonderful program. Debra's a really motivating person. This is her area of expertise, and I'm going to be joining it, and I want to encourage everybody to join it too. I'm going to post the link. I'm sending out an email, and I'm very excited. We've been waiting for this new program to support you, Debra. Thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome. Happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Okay. Reach out to me, support@thepathofbreastcancer.com. Post an email here, a question here for Debra, and I will forward it to her, and we'll make sure your questions and concerns get answered. And I'll be posting the link as soon as Debra sends it to me, so you can all join the program really soon. Okay. Thank you. Bye for now. Have a lovely day, everyone.